4. Running with the Devil starts the first Van Halen album, and House of Pain ends the last Van Halen album with Roth until the Van Hagar era. What if they would have ended House of Pain with the car horns on the demo? It could have looped right back to the beginning of Van Halen 1. Just an interesting note I always thought about, but I never heard anyone talk about. Keep up the good work. Signed, Devon Miller. Well, that's interesting. I don't know if it would have fit, but it might have seemed a bit forced. But I got the point you're trying to make, but I don't know if that would have played out well. What do you think, Dave?
I think that's a great observation, that the horns that they used for the intro of Running with the Devil were really the ending of the House of Pain song that was on the original demo. They changed House of Pain around so much on 1984 that the song is barely recognizable in its new form, certainly lyrically and a lot musically. In retrospect, that would have been a great idea, because 1984 was the last album that they did with Dave during the initial run. So that would have been perfect. But at the time, they certainly weren't looking back and trying to wrap it all together in a nice, neat package.
Absolutely. And we are on to letter number 15, and that letter comes from a gentleman by the name of Will Villar. He says, look at all the people here tonight. It was great running into you both at the Talus show last night. I thought the band sounded incredible, and the Iridium was an awesome venue to see you at. Bumblefoot really blew me away shredding on his fretless guitar. He went on a little bit, but he reminded us to say that his favorite albums are 1984 and Fair Warning, and he also loves Diver Down, and he said, you'll remember me from the first Van Halen bash when I was wearing my David Lee Roth Eat 'em and Smile jacket. Yes, Will, it was awesome running into you. Dave and I came into the Talus show, and he spotted us right away and came over and said hello. He's a very friendly character. And he says he appreciated us coming and said hi, and it was great to see him, and it was great to see that he was out at Talus, and Talus rocked hard, and it was well worth the effort seeing that show. And what do you say, Dave?
I thought it was great. Guy did wonders for our ego. We haven't even sat down yet, and someone's coming over and saying, aren't you Dave and Dave? I was like, wow. So yeah. We made the big time.
That's right. Big time.
Here you go. Spotted in New York City. It was great.
Exactly.
So thank you for your support and coming to and listening to the podcast and coming to the annual show we put on with Romeo Delight. Yep. So hopefully we'll see you at the next one.
Absolutely. Letter number 16 comes from Mark O'Brien, and he says, wow, thanks for reading my last email on the song 5150 and for your awesome reactions. I'm glad I could enlighten you, and I played it for everyone, and now I'm a podcast star. Always one more. You're never satisfied. It's always all with you. It's never one for me. So I draw the line and meet you half the way, but I don't know what that means, 5150. Sorry, it's never one for all with you. It's always one for me. He said he fucked it up, so he just wanted to correct himself there. That's no problem. So, yeah, that's no big deal. We got your message and the point, Mark. We appreciate you pointing that out. I really never noticed that at all, so thanks for clearing that up. Anything on that, Dave, or are you good?
No, I mean, I didn't notice the screw-up either. So, I mean, don't worry about it. It was the overall point that we were like, oh, yeah, that makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah,
absolutely. So thanks again for pointing out the apparent obvious to us that we have missed for over 30 years.
Absolutely. And our next letter comes from a guy by the name of Joe Rumpina. He gets his crack at the Girl Gone Bad lyric. He says, I enjoy the podcast very much and appreciate you guys nerding out on VH every month. Regarding Girl Gone Bad, he thinks it says, these streets are mean. I say I don't call them my own. So somewhere between him and the other guy, we're getting close. I enjoy the creativity, Van Halen Nation, when it comes to mashups and covers. Something I've always wanted to ask is whether someone can bake up versions of Van Hagar songs with Hagar removed and Roth inserted. Always wanted to hear what Roth would sound like over that music. It's too hard to separate the tracks without the masters. Speaking of Van Halen Nation, where can one find that old supposed Van Halen, but probably otherwise 1984 demo that went by the name Fresh? Though the consensus is that it wasn't Van Halen, I used to enjoy listening to it until it disappeared on YouTube. Finally, we Van Halen fans are never going to get anywhere close to what we desire out of the brothers. When it comes down to it, it's their choice, and I cannot quibble. But thank you for keeping a tiny little VH flame alight. David, you ever hear about Fresh?
It rings a bell, but I don't remember it off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. Van Halen never really over-recorded. They talked about that. In 1984, they did that full version of In the Midnight Hour, which has never surfaced. But these guys really didn't really over-record all that much. And as for the brothers, they are rough. They are really rough. And one day, hopefully, some of this stuff will come out, but we never know. What do you think, Dave?
I'd love for that stuff to come out, but, not holding my breath.
Okay. Letter number 18. Hey, Dave, sitting on the couch going down a Queen rabbit hole on YouTube, and I looked up Freddie Mercury Tribute Concert Part 3. I'm watching Gary crush on Hammer to Fall. Once again, it makes me wonder what could have been with some better songs and Gary singing in his natural range instead of straining at the top of his end trying to sound like Sammy. My man is clearly a legit frontman, and he wasn't given the right material. Shannon the Dude. We haven't heard from Shannon in a while. Wow. I agree. Gary is a phenomenal frontman. He killed it on the Van Halen 3 tour. The guy was in a tough position, no doubt. He definitely has a different flavor than Van Halen. He's an East Coast guy, and I think, they needed a producer for Van Halen 3 for sure, and Van Halen 3 could have been stronger. Maybe Warner Brothers should have given him a second chance because they really gelled after that tour. What do you think, Dave?
Well, first of all, Gary did kill it at the Freddie Mercury tribute.
Yep.
In fact, the whole Queen medley that he did with Extreme is one of the highlights of that show.
Yeah.
And Gary did sing when he was in Van Halen. He did start singing a little more like Sammy and in a higher register. But he didn't mind that. He actually liked that because he continued that on in his own solo work after that. He was still singing like that, for example, in the Tribe of Judah album. Not necessarily to the extent that he was on the Van Halen album, where it seemed like they were going to great pains to try and make him sound as much like Sammy as they possibly could. But he said those guys really helped him learn how to sing at that higher range and pushed him vocally, which is interesting to hear because he wasn't exactly a slouch vocally before that. Like, especially when you hear him sing at the Freddie Mercury tribute. So
absolutely.
Gary's just a great singer all around. He definitely has somewhat of a different vibe than Sam or Dave, performance-wise, but great singer. Can never take that away from him. Phenomenal singer.
Absolutely. On to letter number 19. Thanks for the What If theme song last month. That was pretty cool. And if I read between the lines, what ifs are okay as long as they are good. Challenge accepted. I'll try to keep them interesting. What if the band actually finished what they started on the rumored sessions we've heard about? Which one would you be interested in hearing if a mystery bootleg surfaced? 1985 songs with Dave, Eat Thy Neighbor, and more. 1996 songs with Mitch Malloy, It's the Right Time, and more. 1999 songs with Gary, the Van Halen 4 recordings. Or 2000 to 2001 songs with Dave, the Tabula Rasa recordings. I was really looking forward to the follow-up with Gary. I thought the band really gelled on that tour, and Ed got his solo/experimental record out of the way and would have returned to the rock band we all love. Rock on, Eric Torbeck. Well, Dave, it looks like we're in for another episode of What If. Now it's time for What If with Dave and Dave. Shit, what if? What if? Dave Marconi's favorite segment, What If? What if, motherfucker?
I don't do what ifs.
Okay, so, wow, I gotta admit, I am a greedy bastard. I want all of these things. I want all of those bootlegs. But if Preston could only have one, I'd like to hear the 2000 to 2001 Tabula Rosa recordings. Did you ever hear that phrase, Dave? Tabula Rosa?
Yeah, I thought it was Tabula Rosa. I don't know. But yeah, I have heard that. That was the rumored album title of the album that was going to come out at that time with the original 4. Which I think was, I want to say Spanish, but it was another language for clean slate.
Yeah, it's a Latin phrase for blank slate.
Oh, okay, sorry. So obviously my foreign language skills are poor as usual.
All right.
But I do agree with you. Out of all those things, those are the recordings I would want to hear the most.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, because, first of all, the Mitch Malloy thing from 1996, they didn't really do any new stuff from Mitch other than that song he released.
Right.
And he released some live in the studio stuff he did with them of old songs. And aside from maybe one or two other songs that he did like that, that's it for the Mitch Malloy era.
Right.
There's really nothing more than that. And as far as the second Gary album, I'm just afraid that, a lot of times unreleased stuff is unreleased for a reason.
Yeah.
And that's because it's really not that good.
Right.
And I'm not saying that the 1999, 2000 stuff is going to be that great either.
Right.
But as far as what I'm really curious about the most, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it right there.
Yeah. Like you said, the Mitch stuff is sort of already out there. The Gary stuff would be interesting, but the Roth certainly oversees that. I think the 2000, 2001 era stuff is much further along, and it would be very interesting. As far as the 1985 stuff, I don't know how much there is of that. There's such a rumor about that. I mean, that whole Eat Thy Neighbor stuff, and I don't know. I would also imagine it would sound like crap, too. I would imagine that the 2000 era stuff would be really something to listen to. My question is, how about a box set of all these things, calling it the 5150 Vaults? I think fans would go nuts for that.
Absolutely. And again, this goes back to what will Wolf do, or what will anybody do for that matter, to put that stuff out and continue the Van Halen legacy.
Here's the problem, though. You wait too long, you lose a fan base. I mean, you have to have an audience for something like that.
That's very true, because not every band is like the Beatles, where you can keep putting this stuff out and it'll sell like hotcakes. No. Right? Not every band is the Beatles, not every band is the Rolling Stones.
Right.
So you're right. After a while, you could spend a lot of time and money putting this stuff out, and it just won't sell because nobody cares anymore.
Absolutely. And that wraps up our What If segment.
That's all, folks.
And we are on to our last letter number 20. Hi, guys. I'm a huge fan of your podcast, and I'm looking forward to it every month. Love the breakdown of 1984, and you guys mentioning how songs like Jump in Panama have been a bit overplayed, where you kind of lose appreciation for them. I felt that way about And the Cradle Will Rock for a long time, until I saw Sons of Apollo play it live last year, and it jump-started my love for the song again. My question is, are there any Van Halen songs that are covered by other bands that you really enjoyed? Recently, Greg Renoff tweeted a YouTube link of Corey Taylor and John Five doing Take Your Whiskey Home live. I was blown away. So damn good. You also made mention that you'd like to see a band like the Struts open for Van Halen if they were possibly to go on tour. I was curious of what current bands are you guys listening to now? I enjoy some of the newer bands out like Rival Sons, Alter Bridge, Greta Van Fleet, Pretty Reckless, and Crowbot. Lastly, Damon Johnson's new album came out recently, and it's excellent. Take a listen if you haven't already. Mike Mahalik. Mike Mahalik. From Chicago.
I think one of the best part of this podcast is listening to you try to pronounce it.
Yeah, right. So, well, I don't know. I haven't heard a lot of Van Halen covers. I tell you, I remember Take Your Whiskey Home played in concert by a keyboard player from Huntington, Long Island, named Russ Irwin, back when we were in Villanova, Dave, in the early 90s. That was really good, but I don't really hear a lot of people playing Van Halen stuff. Do you have one that sticks out?
I do. So Billy Sheehan, in one of his many bands, he has a side band called B3, and they do a cover of Mean Street, which is so good.
I can imagine.
So good, because Billy does the whole guitar intro on bass. The band is basically bass, keyboard, and drums, and really a phenomenal, solid band. And they do an instrumental version of that song that is so good, so good.
Where is that available?
Anywhere you can get fine music, Dave. It was on one of the B3 albums, so it's definitely there. I forget which one.
Okay,
but you can find it.
And as far as new bands that I listen to, the Struts is the big band that I listen to a lot. Rival Sons I like. Greta Van Fleet, I do like Greta Van Fleet, but I have sort of like